Hello, my name's Marty Marr from Gratitude Properties. Welcome to our winter report. Well, there's a fair bit going on in the world right now, and some of this definitely affects real estate. I've been doing these reports for about 25 years, and I could say the same statement for every time I've done a report over those 25 years. There's always a fair bit going on in the world, and that can affect real estate. The one thing we've got to understand, there's rarely the absolute right time to act in real estate. So it's whether you're a buyer or seller, those times can vary. But the things that's important to know when you're trying to work out what's going on in the property market is you can only see the big trends in hindsight. And if we look back, who would have foreseen the capital gains that we saw during the COVID period, and who would have seen 13 interest rate rises coming, and also what that would do to the property market? So we can only ever see these things in hindsight when we look back at them. So if we're looking at trends from a hindsight perspective, I think if we look back from the future to the point where we are right now, we're probably just past the bottom of this new cycle. If the top of the market was in COVID in 2022, and we've seen interest rates come down, we feel that right now we're past the bottom of that cycle and we're starting to see some improvement in the market. The reason we say that, if you look what's just occurred, we've had 2 interest rate cuts. We've got inflation under control. We just had an election where the government hasn't changed, so there's some stability there. And also unemployment is low. So all the drivers that can drive stability in the market are in place at the moment, and that we can now start to see some action. And we're noticing inquiry levels have certainly lifted since the last interest rate cut. So therefore we think the bottom of the cycle is probably just past it. So what we're now looking at is engagement levels. So the amount of people in the market and whether our inquiry levels are increasing, which we've seen some of that recently, particularly since the last interest rate cut. You'll notice that auction clearance rates in Melbourne are probably the most visible markers that we get advertised every week. And we've noticed since Easter, the clearance rates have drifted into the low 70% range, which is really quite a healthy market. You'll find that the amount of listings that will come onto the market will also increase with this as sellers get more comfortable with the market that they get to deal in. They can see some activity going on, and there's usually some pent-up demand in this early phase of the cycle of sellers who have been waiting to get going, and you'll see that with listing numbers also coming up. How this increased activity will affect prices is a bit too early to tell yet. There's a fair bit in play at the moment, but the early signs are looking good for some modest price rises at least. How this affects the coastal markets is that typically the activity happens in Melbourne first, because most of our money initiates from Melbourne through asset swaps or just people who want to visit the coast or move to the coast. That typically starts in Melbourne and ends up here, and there's usually a slight lag, but really spring this year we'll start to really see some impact on how the market's going to unfold over the next 6 months. So I hope you found that informative. If we could be of assistance in any real estate matter, feel free to call on the following numbers. We'd love to help.